Hey, all you wiretappers. Good to be back here in studio with Gangland Wire. This is Gary Jenkins. You know, I'm a retired Kansas City Police Intelligence Unit detective. Now I have a podcast and I interview real crime mobsters, policemen, FBI agents. I do authors that are doing true crime books, and I do authors that are doing novels that are based on true crime. Because we stick with true crime as close as we can here, guys. You know that. And today I have one of those authors that has written a book that is a novel, but it's based on a lot of real events in Las Vegas. And we all know a little bit about Las Vegas and the Mafia. So, Aaron Mead, welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What a little bit about your history.
Sure. Yeah. I've been working as an engineer, water engineer for 30 some odd years. And so I come by my writing habit as a sort of a side interest. I've got a very, I've got a varied educational background too. So I started out as an engineer in my training, and then just had a creative itch and went back to school, ended up doing a PhD in philosophy of all things. And while I was doing that, I thought I might be an academic. I thought I might be a professor at one time. Yeah. And through the job search, things didn't really work out. I did find a job, but it just wasn't going to pay well enough to consider moving my family across the country for it. So I ended up not going into academia, but I stuck with writing, which was my favorite part of the PhD, the dissertation. And I just started writing different things, some nonfiction stuff related to my dissertation research, but then just got an idea for a story, wrote a novel. It's still sitting in the drawer. I'm interested in publishing that someday. But this idea for the book related to kind of Las Vegas mob stuff actually came connected with my work as a water engineer. So I work for Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We import water to Southern California from the Colorado River. And so I track the Colorado River news pretty closely. And in 2022, the lake was dropping because of drought and overuse, and this body in a barrel showed up on the shore of Lake Mead, and there was a gunshot wound to the head, and this looked an awful lot like a mob hit to the authorities. And so this just piqued my interest and got me thinking about how did this barrel get there and this body, and what's the story behind it. And I started doing a little research, and it turns out that the clothing on the body was pretty well preserved. So the police dated it to the late 70s, early 80s potentially. And that's, of course, the heyday of the mob activities in Las Vegas. It got me onto the Chicago outfit and some of the characters involved in that, the outfit's activity in Vegas there. And so my story just went from there. But yeah, I guess that's a little about me and the story. So yeah.
Yeah, those are the days when Tony Spilotro was really active out there, Chicago outfit, man on the scene, if you will. And body in the barrel, another interesting Chicago link is they found a guy named Johnny Rosselli, who was a highly placed mob guy who was connected to Las Vegas and Los Angeles. He had been their guy before Spilotro. He had been their representative out in the West, and they found his body in the barrel down in Florida.
Wow, okay. Yeah,
reference there.
I'd read a little that this is a pretty popular method of body disposal in various times. And Tony Spilotro I understand that they haven't actually identified the victim yet, but the kind of style of killing they think is pretty connected with something Tony Spilotro might do. I guess the sort of low caliber gunshot wound was a popular way to dispose of it, to whack people, just because it was a little less messy than a high caliber weapon.
Yeah, this is when they call it a lupara blanca, which means white shotgun in Italian, and that means that you never find the body. Only in this case, they found the body. Every once in a while, they'll find a body. Not very often, though. Usually, they hide them pretty good. Now, who'd ever thought that Lake Mead would drop that much?
Yeah, they dropped it at 100 feet of water, and I don't think anybody expected it to drop that low. And it could go even lower in the next couple of years here, honestly.
Really? No. Oh, really? It's still dropping. I thought there'd been some more rain and some snow up in the mountains that were going to add to that. It's going to be still dropping, huh?
Yeah, there has been a fair bit of precipitation this year, but in the areas that count most, where you get most of the runoff, which is up in the mountains of Colorado and Utah, it's really quite dry, actually. They've had some rain, but not much snow, and so they're talking about a snow drought. Yeah, it just depends. We'll see how things develop, but it could get bad.
Yeah, talk about that gun. Now, Chicago was noted for using these 22 caliber, high standard, I think they're Browning semi-automatic pistols with a silencer on it. And they had them out there, I believe. And they also, another interesting thing about the outfit, in order to keep the sound down, they would load their own shells. And so had less powder in them, and sometimes the shells didn't do the job that they wanted to do. Now, Frank Culata, who was in Las Vegas working for Tony Spilatro during these years, he tells a story about trying to kill a guy with one of those guns and how he had such a hard time getting him killed. So I don't know how many holes were in this guy's head, but you got to get somebody just right in the head with that 22 caliber pistol.
Yeah, they say it had to be pretty close range. You're talking about the Jerry Listener murder, I think. Is that right? Yeah,
Yes.
I read about that one. That's actually the kind of the murder in question in my book is based on that loosely. And so, yeah, Collada advises my main character, Lenny, to load his gun with half loads because they've lost their silencer or something. So that'll keep the sound down. But yeah, I guess Listener ended up with multiple bullets to the head. And when they found him, more than you'd imagine would be necessary.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a guy that worked for the Stardust named Jay Vanderwalk that disappeared at the time. It disappeared for a long time. Did you look at that one too as some of your for source material?
Yeah. So there's this great article that's been turned into a podcast on the Mob Museum website. I don't know if you're familiar with that in Las Vegas there. And they suggest there might be 3 potential victims. Vandermark is one of the. Is that the guy you mentioned, George Vandermark?
Yeah. Or Jay Vandermark.
Yeah, they call him by Jay. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, he is one of the. He's a missing person, right? From that era, had connections with the Argent Company, so they think that's one of the possibilities. He was running the skimming operation, at least in some of the casinos there for Argent, and I guess as the Gaming Control Board in Nevada found out about this skimming operation, gradually they were starting to talk to people, and I think that they were worried either he was going to talk, or actually, I think the outfit suspected he was stealing money from them.
I think it was a combination. Stealing money is worse than talking.
Right. Yeah. So I guess he took off to Mexico, maybe I read, or Costa Rica even. But I think
he came back. I can't remember the exact story, but yeah.
Yeah. From what I read, Nick Calabrese, who I guess was a hitman for the outfit and then turned eventually and started talking to the feds, he suggested that I guess Vandermark ended up in a hotel in Phoenix or something, and the outfit sent a couple of hitmen after him and whacked him there. And then Calabrese said they buried his body in the desert. So if that's true, then obviously it's not the guy in the barrel, but he's one of the ones they talk about because they never found his body. Yeah. And I guess the other one I read about was William Crespo. This was another.
I know that story.
Yeah. So the little I know of it is he was a drug runner involved with the outfit in Las Vegas, and he got caught kind of landing in the Las Vegas airport coming from Miami with $400,000 worth of cocaine on him. And the feds arrested him. He accepted an offer of immunity to become an informant, and he was set to testify about this drug ring that the outfit was part of. And he actually ended up testifying before a grand jury, got a bunch of folks indicted. I guess one of the names, folks who was indicted was Victor Gregor, according to this article. He was a former Argent executive. Okay. But then when Crespo himself went to testify, he was set to testify in June '83, and they got to him before then, and he never testified. So he's another kind of missing person they suspect could be in the barrel. Mm-hmm. But the article thought the most likely candidate was a guy named Johnny Pappas. I don't know if you know him at all.
Yeah, I don't know the story of that.
Okay, so this is a Chicago native, a guy who was involved in some of the Argent Corporation casino work, and he was, I guess by the late 70s, he was managing this resort on the northern part of Lake Mead called Echo Bay Resort, which was an Argent Corporation resort. And it's closed now. It's not there anymore. It used to be like a hotel and a boat launch. And so he was at the lake at different times. He also owned a boat on Lake Mead. And so in 1976, the day he disappeared, his wife told authorities basically that he went to meet this guy at a restaurant who was interested in buying his boat at Lake Mead. And so they think it could have been a ruse set up by outfit folks, luring him basically down to the lake to show him his boat, and then they knock him off and take him out on his own dang boat and drop him in the lake. The motive is a little less clear in this case, but it was around that time when stuff was coming out about the Argent Corporation and the skimming, and they could have just thought he was a liability, might be set to talk or something. Yeah, those are the 3 that I read about anyway.
He just disappeared after this meeting to go sell his boat. Yeah.
Yeah, they found
that theory makes sense.
They found his car parked in the Circus Casino parking lot on the Strip the next day, and he's just gone. disappeared.
Yeah.
So
I'll be darned. I hadn't heard that story. That is a pretty likely scenario. Say, hey, I'll drive. Let's run down there and let's see that boat. I got the money right here. You show the guy a bunch of money and he'll drop all caution to go the wind. That's how they do it. And it got them isolated then.
yeah.
And maybe it's a last minute deal. So nobody really knows who he's meeting and where he's going or that he's even going. So that's a classic in the mob.
Yeah. Apparently he told his wife he was going to go sell his boat, but that's about it.
Yeah. I'll be darned.
Yeah.
As Lake Mead's gone down, has there been any other bodies or any other things that have been found out there?
Yeah, there's been some strange things turn up. One is a sort of a World War II era airplane, honestly, started coming out of the water, but that was known about for some time. You could see it, I guess, from aerial photos. But so other bodies, yeah, there's a few other bodies, just skeletons, nothing in barrels, and no gunshot wounds. So people just were, I think authorities have identified most of those and suspect they were just drowning victims, unfortunate boating accidents and whatnot. But nothing like this body in a barrel. I think they've been trying to identify that body. There's lots of DNA evidence, right? That you got still a pretty intact body. But the problem is back in that era, I guess they didn't have the DNA database to be matching with. Yeah. So it's not borne a lot of fruit. I think it's still an open case, honestly.
Really? Only the chance they have is if one of that guy's descendants goes to something like 23andMe and then does that. And I know they've come up with a deal where they can start running an unknown DNA through those files and see if you can come up with a connection and then go back and see, okay, where would this guy have ever come across or be in this other person's family tree, if you will, and then they can eventually get it
fascinating.
identified. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is what they could do. I had a guy that used to be a professional criminal talking about it. He said, I don't know why anybody does crime today. He said, with the DNA and the cameras and the cell phones and all that, he said, there's just way, way too many ways to get caught.
That's wild. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. I watch a lot of crime shows and I see a lot of that stuff. I guess it sticks.
And everybody watches those crime shows, so they know about those tools out there. So first thing, you got to go get a burner phone. If you're going to go do something, you better go get a burner phone. And then you better dress up in one of those suits in those English police movies, those big white hazmat suits. And your whole face covered.
Crazy. Yeah.
And then go do it. And don't use your own car. You better go steal a car somewhere.
Man. Complicated. It's too hard.
Yes. And even then, if they look at you and say, your phone never moved for 24 hours, but yet you were seen over here or over there. How come you didn't have your phone with you or your car? You parked your car here for 12 hours and then you came back and got it. What were you doing? It is just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us, what's the storyline of your book? Don't give too much away. You want people to buy it. I understand that. But tell the guys the storyline of your book.
Sure. Yeah. So the storyline is it starts out with the true events of 2022, right? This headline that there's a body in a barrel shows up on the shore of Lake Mead. And my main protagonist, who's sort of made up from my imagination, his name's Lenny Battaglia. And he reads this headline. He's an old time mob associate. He, at one time when he was young, was connected with the outfit, but ended up getting out of it barely. But he reads this headline and starts to get worried because he's got a barrel with a body in it that's his victim farther out in the lake. So this one that he reads about is not his. It's actually his partner's, who, in my story, the partner is loosely based on Frank Collada, actually. And so he reads this headline, gets worried, goes out in his little boat to try to move his victim farther out into the lake because he's concerned that his lake, the lake's continuing to drop, and the falling lakes acts like a ticking clock in my story in some ways. So
I think The Sopranos did something like this. They thought somebody was going to come up and buy some farm, and they had sent these guys up to dig this body up and move it. So that is not out of the realm of possibility, is it?
No. But what is out of the realm of possibility is this old guy in his tiny little boat actually moving the barrel. So he goes, he goes out with a gaff with a hook on it and tries to yank it out with his little outboard motor, and it won't budge. The thing's really heavy. If you know anything about water, stuff underwater is really heavy.
Really heavy.
Yeah, he's wrestling with it. and ends up falling in while he's trying to pull this barrel farther out. And so it's a big failure. And while he's falling in, he has this flashback to the killing, basically.
Yeah.
And so the story kind of goes from there, but it's really focused on how he deals with what he's done, basically. Crime is no mystery from the beginning. It's not a traditional police procedural where
Not who done it.
yeah, it's not like that. It's more like kind of what's the aftermath? What's the effect of a terrible crime like this on even the perpetrator? Yeah. And as I said, one of my characters is based on Frank Collada. The story takes place in kind of two time frames, right? We've got the contemporary time frame, but then we got flashbacks to his time at the mob, and Frank was his partner in this hit. We've also got a character showing up who's based on Tony Spilotro. I call him Tony Bonucci, named after one of my favorite Italian soccer players. but yeah, so we got this connection to the early 80s, late 70s, and then also this kind of contemporary period. And I understand Frank Collada was actually, he recently just died, right?
He did during COVID times. I think he already had COPD. He was already, everything he did, you'd see him, he'd have his oxygen on. And so he was already weakened. Then he got COVID during COVID.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some listening to a podcast he was on in researching my book, and it was really fascinating to listen to him.
Yeah, he is. He's got there's a whole book out there that he mainly just told stories about his life during the whole book. It's just, it's amazing. I did one with him and then added some more clips in from that a long time. One of my earlier ones, I got to know him real early because we had the mob con out there. I knew the guy that was getting it going, and I went out there. The guy that actually, Denny Griffin, who wrote the books with Frank Collada, wrote several books with Frank Collada, and I'd gotten to know Denny, and so Denny invited me to come out and do a program at the first mob conference, and I met Frank then. So I met him and a couple others after that. He was gruff, but he was a good guy. What I mean, but he was gruff. I'll tell you, he wasn't a guy that just. It was hard to joke around with him.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I got a bit of that vibe from the podcast of him that I was listening to. Yeah, it's funny. Just genuine Italian Chicago, like to the core. Wild.
Yeah. He was that. He was born and bred from early his childhood. He was a Chicago mobster. There's no doubt about that.
It's wild.
And
Denny Griffin's book was really helpful to me, actually, in my research. Yeah, the Battle for Las Vegas in particular was.
Yeah, that's the one I used. Denny was Denny's dead now. I don't know if you knew that.
I did know that, unfortunately.
I was pretty good friends with Denny. He helped me out a lot when I got started and got me out there. And he gave me, for my first documentary, which was about the skimming, a lot about the skimming, he got me several people to interview, lined me up with them and verified, hey, this guy's okay, and work with him. And I flew out to Las Vegas and interviewed a bunch of people, and interviewed him too. But he got me an employee of the best casino that knew Lefty Rosenthal really well. She gave us a really great sound bites. I get calls today or emails wanting to know if she's still around. She's died since. People are still trying to find her to interview her.
That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, that's because Denny Griffin, he was a good guy. He really was.
That's neat. His book was certainly good.
Yeah, interesting. So what else you want to say about your book before we get out of here? Besides, go out and buy it. Go out and buy it. It's on Amazon, I'm sure, and I'll have a link to the Amazon site.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it is on Amazon. What do I want to say about it? I guess the other thing to say is it's got some, I don't want to give too much away, but gun violence is really a big part of the book. Not only this single mob hit, but also it wraps in this mass shooting in 2017, the one where the guy was in the hotel suites up high, and he was shooting across the street into that country music festival. So it's really, I compare it to two things, right? I compare it to Casino, which is this famous Scorsese film from that mobster era, which everybody knows about. And actually, Frank Collada was in. He had a cameo in that. Yeah, that's funny. But then the other thing I compare the book to is Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, which is obviously this sort of towering literary novel, but the parallel is just dealing with this aftermath of violence, right? What happens when you kill somebody, and what's the sort of dealing with guilt and fear and the consequences. So I'd say those are the sort of things I point to as parallels for the book. I don't know. There's a lot more to say. Like you said, it's grounded in true life crime, but it's also definitely fiction. I've made up the better part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Aaron Mead. The book is Body in the Barrel. Aaron, I really appreciate you coming on the show. And guys, I'll have links to this book down below.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure meeting you and hearing some of your stories, and I'm enjoying your podcast, and
Okay.
it's been a privilege to be on here. So thank you.
Okay. We like to hear that. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'll do a little extra here in a minute. I
Okay.
just want to tell you something. When I went to law school, and
Oh,
worked
yeah.
in the police department, and my favorite class was water law. And I did my,
Mm.
you have to do a 50-page publishable paper to get out of law school.
Hmm.
And I did mine on Western water law. And it was just, I was fascinated by that Western water law and all the things that go into that, the Rio Grande Pact and all the different political entities that are trying to use that water,
Mhm.
how they use it, and then how the EPA rules then figured in on using water out west. And the fact that out west, they treated water like they treated gold or some other mineral. If you found the source, you owned it.
Mhm.
Whereas they had riparian interest in laws back east here, where you have plenty of water.
Mhm.
You can use all the water you want as long as you don't reduce it, but nobody owns that source of water.
Yep.
If it's a big source, it was just a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it is a bit of the Wild West, like applies to water out west. It's that first in
Yeah.
time, first in right thing. It's pretty crazy. The Colorado River, especially, is so complicated. You got seven states that take water from it. You got the federal government running the dams there. You've got Mexico that takes a portion of it. You've got this whole 100-year history of law layered on top of each other. And even today, like the rules on how the water gets distributed are about to expire in this year. And so we're trying to come up with new rules, and it's just so tough because there's less water in the river than there used to be. And so the old agreements don't quite work out, and we're having to take reductions, and, who takes what. It's just sort of a big mess, honestly. We're fighting over it. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up in court, honestly. But that would be not a good outcome, but it seems potentially likely.
Yeah. Well, there's a judge I heard say once that if you better make a deal outside of my courtroom. If you come into my courtroom, my decision is not going to, I'm going to hurt everybody's feelings with my decision.
Yeah. And inevitably, like the folks, the special masters or whatever the justices are that are making the decisions, they just don't know as much about water as we do.
Yeah.
If we can't work it out, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I know. And there are just so many pressures that are on it. And it's a tough one. Plus, one thing we haven't mentioned is a huge growth in population over the last 20, 30 years out there.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Just unbelievable how many people have moved to Phoenix and Albuquerque and Las Vegas, especially Las Vegas, but just been such a huge growth in population out. And before it was desert, that nobody really, they didn't want to live out there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And surprisingly, like in a lot of these cities, actually, the demand for water has not increased. Like in Las Vegas, it's actually gone down.
Really?
They have done an incredible job of conserving water. Same in Los Angeles, the demands for water have gone down despite the population growth. The thing that makes it challenging is that the whole pie is shrinking, and it's the agricultural use that's the highest. I think it's something like 85 or 80% of the water in the Colorado Basin is agricultural. And so those are the things. You're going to need to find conservation there, which is harder.
Yeah. Like those Israelis did it with something called drip irrigation, where they they were more skillful in the way they used their water in their fields down in the desert. So
and some of the agricultural folks have been converting to that kind of irrigation for quite some time now. So it's like we're wringing out every sponge we got and running out of options. But we'll figure it out one way or the other here.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yeah,
this is America after all. Or is it still America?
It's hard to know. Yeah, it's hard to know.
Go down that path.
Looking a little different these days.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, Aaron, I really appreciate it. I'll get in touch with you whenever I send you an email with the links after I put them up. It'll be, I don't know, it'll probably be a month or more before I get it up. I've got I stay way ahead. I got quite a few kind of scheduled up for the next 2 weeks now or 3. And
Smart.
I have 2 weeks now. One just went up today. So I put it up video. I put them up on Sunday evening, and then the audio comes out like 4:00 in the morning on Monday morning. And don't ask me why. I just started doing that.
No worries. It gets ahead of everybody. Then they can see it. Hey, I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
No.
Do you know about any contemporary organized crime activity in Las Vegas? Is there still stuff going on, or is it? Oh
I
no.
don't. I really
Okay.
don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, Trying to think of a source for you. I'll check with the source for you.
Okay. I know it's not Midwest
Might
folks from
know.
your era, but yeah.
Yeah, no, probably something up there out at Los Angeles, and people that moved out there a generation ago and stayed under the radar, and then of course international
Yeah.
criminals like Russians and people like that. And then
Okay.
out of Phoenix or and Los Angeles both. But anyhow, I'll check on that.
Okay. Yeah. If you think of something, that'd be great. I'd be interested. Cool.
Okay,
Okay.
I will. All right, Aaron.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Take care.
All right, all
Bye
right.
bye.
Can you go ahead and do? Can you exit the meeting? I'm going to do a little ending thing here.
I will. Yep.
That was interesting, folks. I did water law well, that was interesting, folks. I really liked Aaron, and I think his Body in a Barrel book is going to be pretty darn good. So I'd recommend you try it. I haven't actually read it myself, but I read excerpts from it. I've got it here. I need to sit down and take some time and read it. I like when they base it on the real life people and some people that I know something about. It's kind of like hearing stories about your hometown. Oh, yeah, I know that guy. Oh, yeah, I remember when that happened. And it's an interesting thing, the lowering of Lake Mead. He's a water engineer, and he and I talked a little bit more about it. I find it a fascinating topic, that Western water law and Western water rights and how that all works. It's different than back east where we have plenty of water. So don't forget, I've got videos on Amazon Prime for rent. Just use my name and Mafia, Gary Jenkins Mafia on Amazon Prime, and you'll find them. And I've got books there. Do the same thing, Gary Jenkins Mafia books. I've got 3 books on Amazon, and I've got them on my website. And I always appreciate when people make comments on my YouTube channel or on my Gangland Wire podcast page. We're just here to report mob history. That's all we want to do is report mob history. And in this case, we got a fictional book that's reporting mob history based on real mob history. I'll do that every once in a while too. So thanks a lot, guys. I always appreciate doing this show. It's a way to end my life out, if you will. I'm down to that last quarter, maybe even down to the last 2 minutes one of these days, but we'll get there. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, guys.